And welcome everybody to episode 25 of the HOU.SEC cast, the HOU.SEC.CON podcast. Sam, I am getting chills with our next guest here. It sounds weird, but he's a legend. He is an absolute legend. Who we got coming?
Yeah, on our quarter century episode, we have Mr. Gene Spafford, otherwise known as Spaff.
Dr. Gene Spafford.
Doctor, I mean, one of the smartest guys on the planet, right? From
Absolutely.
a cyber and super excited. And we were just joking earlier before we started. It's like, it's just sends chills down your spine. And it's just really cool to be able to talk to him, and super excited that he's coming to open up our conference, here in little old H-Town.
Yeah, it's only the fourth largest city in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of making up to do, right? So,
well, I'm super excited about having Spaff come to talk and get on here on the podcast and give us some updates or kind of tease us a little bit with what he's going to be talking about. Talk about his new book he's got coming out. Yep, Let's just get going. I don't want to keep everybody waiting. They don't need to talk to us. They need to talk to him.
Cannot wait. Let's go.
All right. Sam, episode 25. Glad to be on here. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. Ready to get into the conference, man. We don't have that long to go here. We'll talk about it in just a second, but it's coming close.
We are very close, and we're getting that pre-conference anxiety right now.
The jitters are definitely starting.
Yeah.
But speaking of the conference, we've got a very special guest on here who is going to be opening up the conference. So Dr. Gene Spafford, everybody knows you as Spaff. We are very honored for you to be on our podcast and opening up HOU.SEC.CON for us there. So how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. The semester has just started for us, and I'm getting back into the swing of torturing my students.
So they'll be thankful for you coming down to take a break there in September, right? So
exactly.
Get a couple of days off. Yeah. Well, seriously, thank you for being on. We're going to do a quick HOU.SEC.CON update, and then we're going to get into talking to you about everything about Spaff. So let's do the HOU.SEC.CON segment real quick, Sam. First of all, we have got a HOU.SEC.CON user group that I think most people know about. We are not going to have one this month in September when this gets released because we've got HOU.SEC.CON coming up on September 24th and September 25th. Hopefully we will have a new location to announce very, very soon. We're working on that. But as we said in one of the other podcasts, we're going to be moving into a new location. So be on the lookout for that. And Sam, what about HOU.SEC.CON itself? Like I said, we're getting really close. What are some updates?
Yeah, so the agenda's up. It has been for a while. We did really well this year. It was great to finally get that up early so people could look. So if you'll look, there's 10 different tracks. So we've grown it dramatically. There's a lot of content over 2 days. Tickets are on sale. We will have plenty of tickets. Don't wait though, because there is a chance we end up selling out just from a logistics perspective. But I would, make sure you get your tickets quickly. Yeah, so very excited about that. I think we've got some other things rolling there too. You want to talk a little bit about the CTF?
Yeah, CTF is going to open up the Saturday before, so we've got a really good one this year. Idaho National Labs is coming in. They're going to be putting that on. I'm really excited about that. That'll be a cool mix of IT and OT flags. We will have link in the show notes for you to be able to set yourself up, register for it, get it ready to go, and then be ready to have some fun with that CTF. And obviously we're going to have a lot of people doing it on site. So if you come on site and join in on the CTF, that'll be a lot of fun. And then we've got a bunch of authors, hundreds of free books this year, a lot of book signings. So please come out to that. That'll all be in the village. One thing I will say this year is we're mixing it up a little bit. We're going to have an actual conference room vendor hall, whereas we've usually had that kind of right in the middle of everything. We're going to have a vendor hall this year. We're trying to be big boy and big girl conference, growing up a little bit. So if you do come out to the conference, please make sure you make it to the floor and see those. We're going to have coffee bars, and the village will be on the other side of that. We'll have a lot of reasons to go in there, but go see the sponsors. They're what makes this possible, so we can keep those ticket prices low. But it should be a lot of fun. Going to be a little bit of a different look and feel for us, but I'm excited about it.
And there's going to be fun stuff to do inside the vendor sponsor hall. So you're going to want to be there.
That's
It's
exactly
there's
right.
some cool stuff we have set up. So excited for that. In fact, you may find me hanging out there more than I do in the sessions this year. So that's
Let's
okay
just
too.
say if you're an old video game nerd, you might want to
You're going
be
to want
there.
to be there.
You
Yeah,
might
you're going
want
to
to
want
be
to be
there.
there.
Could be fun. All right. Well, that's it for updates on HOU.SEC.CON. So let's get into it and talk to Spaff. Spaff, I know you've been on a million of these things. I know you've talked in a million places. You're really not somebody that needs to be introduced. Don't say that to flatter you. I think you know your influence in this industry, and it is a huge honor to have you in here. Typically, we talk about kind of what motivates our guests and our speakers and kind of what got them into the industry. If you want to get into that a little bit and just kind of say what got you into it. I mean, you've established a lot in this industry, and a lot of people, I, I think it was interesting. I was looking on like Google Scholar site and I saw all of the different things that you've written in there, and you've got stuff that you wrote in 89 that's still being cited in 2024. It's just, you've got a marvelous history. But can you talk about what motivates you, what got you into this industry, what makes you think about it the way you do, and just kind of we'll go from there.
Well, I can give you the shorter version of this, I guess, is probably best. I really got my start on the academic side uh, by being interested in what happens when computing systems fail. The idea that I could see back then, and we're talking early 1980s as a grad student, it was clear to me that computing had potential to be used in a lot of places, and some of those could be critical places. Uh, in 1980 or 81, I actually was doing some consulting work, and that included writing software for testing machines at a hospital. So it was really clear to me that if the computers malfunctioned or went down, this would be a problem. So my thesis work was originally focused on the area of fault tolerant computing systems, things that might have a software problem and then continue operation. And that's actually where I did my PhD dissertation, which, if you look on Google Scholar, is probably not being referenced by anyone for good reason. But that was my start. And then I realized that a lot of the problems that were there, that fault tolerance, it wasn't so much the hardware that had been largely solved in the late 70s, early 80s, but the software faults. They were not written well.
Hmm.
Various problems like buffer overflows and off by one errors. So I did a postdoc for almost 2 years in software engineering research. And then through a sequence of things, ended up going to Purdue, where I continued working in software engineering. But even though my students and I had come up with what we thought were some really good solutions to building better software and debugging, companies weren't overly interested in it. And then the internet worm hit. I
Mm-hmm.
used some of my software engineering background to disassemble that and write the disassembly and analysis of it, which turned out to be quite widely read.
Yeah.
And I was approached by companies and government agencies to say, well, what more can you do in security? And not only were they interested, but they actually gave me money to help support my students, which in academia is a really important thing
Yeah.
still. So I shifted my focus there and shifted from where accidental faults in the software could cause problems to faults that were purposely misused by other people. And that led to the career. I did work in intrusion detection, software construction. And then after about 10 years of that, I took some of the things I had done and really kind of formalized the whole area of what was then software forensics, now more referred to as digital forensics. So I was probably the first person to write up anything on that, and I had a number of tools that were used. Um, and that's kind of the trajectory of what got me into this, or how I got to where I am now. And all along, working with students and getting some of my colleagues to understand how their research could also apply in the area, not just in computing, but issues like psychology, political science, law. Uh,
Yep.
because as we know now, was not so obvious to people back then, uh, cybersecurity is more than just the computer. It's
Yeah.
the people, the processes, the whole environment. And when I started the Sirius Center at Purdue in 1991, this was the basic idea that I tried to get, that it was a university wide, not just computer science, look at how do we improve cybersecurity. Um, so there's more to this story, but that's the
Yep.
abbreviated version.
So what
So
you bring up the term cybersecurity. I mean, back then when I came into it as information security, when I came into IT in general, it was still data processing back in the early 90s. That do you have and maybe just a weird tangential question, but do you have a preference? I still see people arguing about the two terms. So how do you come at that?
Well, the name has changed a lot over time. It was computer security, then it was computer and network security,
Mm.
then it was cybersecurity, um, which was a term that was introduced, I think, in about 1990 at a Senate hearing that Senator Sam Nunn chaired. I actually had a conversation with the senator. I did not like the term. I'm still not fond of it. But as his aide pointed out to me, as son, you're an associate professor. He's a senator. He wins. Um, so um, I remember that conversation very well. Um, and then it went into information security because it was more than computers, it was information. It's since moved on into other terms depending on who you talk. Resilience, right? Computing resilience is another term that people brought up. And now what seems to be more in vogue is the idea of um, computing risk management. That risk management includes more than security, includes safety, correctness, uh, which I think is a better kind of view of what's going on. When something fails, A, we can't always tell what caused it, and B, we still have a problem. So, yeah, I don't have a preferred term. It's just, it's all part of the same issue.
so what do you think? What for you, a top of mind would be, what we're doing better than back then, and where do we have room for improvement, or to be blunt, like where are we failing as an industry?
Um, yeah, again, this is one we could fill several hours with, but
Yeah.
I think where we're doing better is there is a more general awareness that problems can occur. We also are in a position where some of the regulatory environment, legal environment, uh, has set better standards, at least as a minimum level, that people have to adhere to. We've developed some tools that are better for constructing systems. We don't use all of them very well, and we're still highly reliant on old code that was developed back in the 80s or earlier. Trace the history of C back
Mhm.
to 70s. Um, those things we're doing better. Where we still have some room to grow is to actually promote, let's say, security, privacy, and safety to first order principles rather than speed and cost. It's certainly the case that most companies and government agencies are in fact bound by budget. They have a limited budget that they can spend, and they want to get potentially the most computing possible out of that budget expenditure. But because we don't have a good set of measures for what does failure cost, what truly can be lost in hard resources and in soft resources like reputation if a system is compromised, that can't be figured into the equation where people are deciding budgets. And because we don't have enough organizations willing to pay a higher premium, a higher amount to get better quality cyber goods, let's call it, to deploy, we are stuck in this level of where we're using poorly designed, poorly tested, sometimes very old items that are kind of defective. And a term that I've been using for years is what we end up with is an industry that is largely defined by hobbyists and computer janitors. Right. The hobbyists build it, and the computer janitors have to clean up the mess after it breaks. And that's where a lot of us in the field find what we're doing.
So do you see there being a place? Sam and I have had this conversation with 2 or 3 of our guests around secure by design. I mean, do you think there's a place where we can ever get to that? Because initially, when I think of that term in my brain, I immediately think of, well, you've kind of got to tear everything down and start over and design it securely, because we've already been, to your point, we've got stuff that's been around even earlier than that, 60s and 70s and 80s. Is that something that you think of as a pursuit that's worthy, or do we just need to retrofit everything? How do you look at that?
Oh, I think it's definitely a worthy topic. I recently have taken on the role of chair of the advisory board for a project at Sandia National Labs, where they are attempting to define for high consequence computing systems how to bound the risk and how to analyze the design so that it behaves in a known manner and failure modes are known and bounded. But the key to the potential success for this for them is they're not trying to do it for all computing environments. They're looking at high consequence real-time systems or OT systems in a small number of application areas. And I think that's a wise move, because when we talk secure by design, if you think of everything that we have from desktop spreadsheets to military command and control, utility systems, self-driving automobiles, computer games, you mentioned games at you hinted at something about games at the conference. And I'm 2 of the 3, by the way. I'm old and nerdy. I'm just not a gamer. We can do better in specific environments by using our tool set appropriately. Not if you're a carpenter, if you do carpentry work, one saw doesn't work for everything you're going to want to do. Everything isn't held together with nails. But that's kind of how we build software systems and larger complex computing systems, because there is an economy in reuse, but we fail to take into account that reuse may not be appropriate for the environment we're working in. So that's where I think there is an opportunity there to understand better how to customize for particular environments.
So what are you planning to talk about in your keynote? Not to divulge too much detail here, but to kind of take it off in a little bit of a different direction. What's your plan and by the way, thank you for coming to Houston and visiting with our community. It's a big deal for us. We're super excited to have you, but I'm just maybe a little sneak peek as what you plan to launch us with.
So I'll just say I'm really pleased to come. It's a great event. I have friends in Houston, um, but I don't even visit them if it's August. So we,
We cannot blame you. We do not blame you. That's why we do not do the conference in summer.
so it's good timing. Um, uh, Recently, being about 18 months or so ago, um, a book that I was one of the authors of was released on cybersecurity myths and misconceptions. My co-authors on that were Lee Metcalf at the SEI and Josiah Dykstra, who's now with Trail of Bits. And we've got about 175 different myths and misunderstandings, misconceptions that we have repeatedly seen people falling prey to in the field of cybersecurity. Judging from the sales figure, not many people have read the book, so I'm going out and speaking on some of the topics. I can't cover all of them in a talk, but some of the ones that I think are significant to give a sense of this, and then hopefully people will want to pursue some of the others as time and energy avail themselves. One of the big ones that I lead off with, not as a spoiler, but as a community, we do not have a shared definition of cybersecurity. If you asked 100 people to define it, you would potentially get 101 different definitions. A lot of them would mention the CIA triad, but that is not well formed and incomplete if you push on it just a little bit, particularly when you start talking about governance, risk management kinds of issues. CIA doesn't really cover issues of authentication, for instance, as an example. So I'll talk some about that and a couple of the myths that I find annoying personally, including the one that people repeat, this trite users are the weakest link. And I'll explain why I don't buy into that. So I'll talk about some of these, and I, I I think I'll have time for 5 or 6 of those to get into a little bit of depth.
Awesome.
And leave some time for questions. I really like audience feedback, audience questions, and so I want to leave time for that to see what people have to say.
It'll be interesting to see what people say about the users of the weakest link. The other term that some people use, it's equally annoying to me, is that users are stupid, that kind of thing. It's just a lazy way to look at it. And I'll be honest, in my early career in cybersecurity and information security, I tended to fall that way. I didn't think much about it. I, had to deal running the help desk and deal with people who had no clue what they were doing. And it used to drive me crazy in my younger days. And as I got older, it was like, okay, this is a silly way of looking at things, and even a lazy way of looking at things, honestly, just to try to blame it on somebody instead of taking some responsibility for your systems themselves and securing those. So,
yeah, well, there were popular probably over a decade ago, 15 years or so ago, maybe longer, were the idea of stupid user stories. And it was sort of ha-ha about those. But I like to consider myself primarily as an educator. And none of my students are stupid. They're ill-informed on occasion, or they have other priorities. But the whole notion of stupid user stories or blaming the user grate so much on me as an educator, because those students and others come into this, they want to do the right thing. And after we've been able to put them through classes and teach them how to do things, they go on and become rock stars. Figuratively, not literally. I don't teach that.
Yeah, there's some commercials running around that don't call them rock stars. So yeah, but
yeah. And what that tells me, and I'll talk a little bit more about this at the conference, is we have a failure to educate, a failure to provide tools, a failure to provide good examples, and we tell them that security is important, and then we make them use Windows or a bad version of Linux. Yeah, what is the message we're sending there? Uh, so there's a dynamic that is not well understood because we've got this little short phrase that we use, and there are others in the field that we don't think about enough. We don't understand what the root causes are, and that's part of what we've been trying to get at with the book.
One of my biggest honors when my first cybersecurity management role is I worked at a mental health clinic, and in the we had a big campus and we had a whole cafeteria, and a lot of the workers in the cafeteria were from El Salvador, and one of the guys that worked on the help desk was from El Salvador, and I did all the cybersecurity awareness training, and I came out of that with a title, an honorary title of maestro, which was teacher in Spanish, and I always was honored to hear that. Not, I wasn't this guy who was telling them they're dumb. I was teaching them concepts. And these were people who are English as a second and third language. And the fact that I could communicate with them, I always considered that an honor instead of being that mean guy in security that doesn't want to teach us anything. So I get where you're coming from on it. It's a good feeling to teach people instead of talk down to them.
Yeah, well, we have this concept now. For instance, we may have somebody who is coming to the U.S. tourist or other reasons may speak four other languages but not English, and we have people labeling them as dumb, and or they're working in a service related industry because their PhD back wherever they came from has different licensing characteristics in the US, or their English isn't good enough to practice it. That's not a matter of their fault. It's a matter that we haven't provided the context where they can demonstrate what they can really do.
It's just a communication barrier. Absolutely.
Yep.
Totally agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. And same on my side with I'm in the industrial IoT space, if you will. And if you work in a power plant, it's not your job to worry about cyber. That's not, that's not the deal. And just because they don't understand, and I've gone and educated, I've done some very rudimentary presentations to staff at some of these substations, et cetera, that manage some of these areas, and they're very basic stuff. I mean, I've had questions like, how do I secure my home router? Right. And things
Yeah.
like that. And that's okay. Those are great questions, right? It doesn't have to be the super secret squirrel. And I say squirrel with tongue in cheek, obviously being an IoT and utilities, because they are the biggest threat. But the reality of, hey, it doesn't always have to be the bad guys trying to take down the grid. Right. And the education is an important piece of it. So I love hearing that. I think it resonates very, very well with me as well.
Yeah, and you as the cyber guy would be the wrong person to ask about uh, um, generator synchronization, impedance matching, or what the composition of the oil in the transformers is. Uh, we need to understand that we have our own particular specialties, um, and it's not wrong to consult with someone else who may have a better understanding. So that's kind of what I'll be talking about. I don't have the exact set of things planned out yet. When I do these kinds of talks at conferences, what I often do is prepare the exact content of the talk, sometimes even the day before, because so much happens in our industry that there may be something in the news that is uh, much more illustrative of what I wanted to say or could say than what I would prepare 3 months in advance. So uh, I'm giving you a general idea here, but I can't tell you exactly what I'll be doing.
You're not alone in getting those slides a couple of days before. I'm guilty. I think Sam is. A lot of our speakers are. it is what it is. We get it. We're just excited to have you come out, and the book. I've got to get the book. I need to get the book, and I've got several things that I'm reading right now, and I've got to get through those as well. But I'm
Yeah,
definitely
I
going to pick
just
up
put
the
it in
book.
my Amazon basket here before we joined, and I didn't realize that I just totally missed it. So for that, for the record, if you're listening to this, Cybersecurity Myths and Misconceptions, it's on Amazon. Go get it. So Gene really needs us to buy a lot of his books. So let's everybody go buy Spaff's books. Bring it to the conference with you. Maybe he'll sign it for you, right? So
And if we're able to, if you get the book, not the audio version, but the paper version, the illustrations in it were done by my very talented wife,
that's awesome.
who is the more attractive Dr. Spafford of the pair. She's a former professor of art education and an artist. And so she did those. If we can find a way to get her in the conference, you can get a signature from both of us.
Awesome.
She's more than welcome.
Yeah, we're expecting her. I thought you were bringing her, so we were expecting her to be part of it. So yeah.
All
this
right.
is a plus one for you, Spaff. Please bring her along. Absolutely bring her along.
Yeah, she may end up being the main attraction rather than me, but we'll handle that.
We'll bring you both up on stage at the same time. How's that sound?
Well, we'll have to clear that with the boss first, but yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. As I said, I've a number of friends and colleagues in the Houston area. One who I haven't seen in several years was actually one of the people responsible for me getting the center started at Purdue when he worked for Schlumberger Research. And so I'm going to be excited to see him again there at the conference. I'd rather not without his permission.
Okay.
No worries.
No worries at all. And we'll add your the book link to the show notes as well on here, Spaff, so everybody will get that. So
okay.
With our 5 listeners, you'll get we have more than that.
Well, your 5 listeners and my 3 people who bought the book combined could really do some damage.
We're going to
double your sales. We're going to double your sales just like that.
Well, Spaff, seriously, thank you so much for coming on here. I know we've said it, but it was an honor to have you. Going to be great to have you at the conference and kick us off. Really excited about it. Thank you so much.
I very much appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for talking with me today. I look forward to meeting you in Meat Space in Houston.
In Meat Space. Hopefully, it'll be cooled off by then. So.
Indeed.
Fingers crossed.
Sam, anything from your side?
No, absolutely not. Again, hey, I mean, you're listening to this. You can see Gene live at HOU.SEC.CON. He's going to open up for us, so you better get those tickets and come see Spaff. So
get there.
Get
there. Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for being on episode 25. We will see you next time on episode 26 and at the conference. Get your tickets. See you then.